Hey, 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 everybody. It is 5 o'clock, and that means that it is time for what? Happy Hour with Dr. Lisa. I am your host. I am Dr. Lisa Liggins Chambers. I am a psychologist, and I am really excited to talk to you all today about blog number 33, which is called October Ghost Stories, the second edition. I wrote all of these this past October. So we are far removed from October, but they are still on the website. If you want to read those, they are on lisaliggins.chambers.com. So very easy. You can scroll down and follow the stories with me every week when you join this podcast on my blog. You can also ask me questions. I am thrilled. I've actually been asking you all questions lately, and I really appreciate your responses. I'm working on a blog for this week, and I've had some really interesting things to say and learn. And so many of you have been addressing my questions and teaching me a lot of things, and I appreciate that. I'm going to write them all up and post it on the blog on Friday. So I'll give you a little hint. We're going to tap into some things that are a bit dark because I've been getting some questions about those things. So, for example, black magic, I'm going to talk about voodoo. I'm going to talk about these dark things. Number one, I'm not afraid of them. Number two, people need to understand them so they can make a choice as to whether or not to truly tap into those things or not. And one of my jobs is to educate, and I like to do that, especially the kids. When the kids start asking me a lot of questions about various dark things, especially about black magic, and I'm not well versed in those things, I want to learn about it so that I can start addressing their questions. So if you have comments about that, make sure you either give me a call, 765-205-1959, or send me an email at kidscanseeghosts@gmail.com. I am also on all social media platforms, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm actually live right now on Instagram at Kids Can See Ghosts. Can you? And also on my other page at Dr. Lisa 3. So if you actually want to see me and hear me or watch me tell these stories in vivo, you can join me on Instagram. If you like to call in to this podcast, you can do so on Podbean. So I would love to chat with you. Let's make sure we keep things appropriate this time. Okay. All righty. Let's get into it. I've had an interesting week. Today we have a snow day. So if you are in the midst of a snowstorm, be careful. We are here in Illinois. It is bad. In this area of Illinois, we haven't seen snow like this in many years. So we are expected to get somewhere between, 12 to 16 inches of snow. So it's pretty deep, no pun intended, out there. So you are in that situation, be careful, stay off the roads. It's so bad that our IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation, they're pulling all of their snow trucks today at 6 o'clock. That's how bad it is here. Yeah, how about that for winter? So I am supposed to be doing this podcast at 5:30 while I am working, but since we had a snow day, I chimed in at 5 o'clock, the usual time. So let's talk about it. October ghost stories. For this vlog, what I wanted to do was to give you some of my personal experiences with, I don't want to say the paranormal. What I want to say is this is a suggestion of paranormal activity. So one story had a lot to do with my oldest child. And then I have a couple of stories in real estate, which is going to be new to all of you, because some of you didn't know or don't know that I had a real estate license. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to touch upon the angel in the tree, which was actually a paranormal experience of mine and my family. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a dream that I had when I was about 26 years old. So I decided on this particular day back in October, I was going to tell the public, all of you, some of my own personal stories, which I have a lot of them since I've been working with these kids, but these are the ones that stood out at the time. So let me tell you about the first one. I remember when my oldest child was about 3. She was either 3 or she was close to 3. And I was home alone with her and decided, I guess, because I used to put her to bed at 8 o'clock. So because I was in school when she was that little. So she had to be on a strict schedule with going to bed. And so I put her to bed at about 8 o'clock. And I remember going back to my room feeling weird. You ever had that weird feeling? Like you get chills and your instincts tell you that something is just not right. And to this day, I can't explain what that was, but it was there. And so as I walked back to her room, like most people, I thought, it's just me. It's no big deal. It's just me. And so I decided to just go ahead and go study, right? And then something just came over me. I think I was only about 31 years old, maybe, because she was about 3. So I was really young. I was only 31. And the feeling that I had, I jumped up out of the bed. Now, mind you, I was home by myself, and I jumped up, like literally jumped out of my bed, ran across the hall, and ran into her room and just looked in her room because it just felt like there was something really strange about her room. So let me pause for a second. There are some people that I've actually talked to who've had some of those eerie feelings like that. And so some of you can relate to what I'm saying. You don't know what it is, it's just something. And that's how I felt. And over the years, when I described that experience to other people, I told them it's just something. I don't know what it was. But anyway, it had me jumping out of my bed. I went to her room and looked in her room, and she was sleeping. And when I looked at her in her direction, something just came over me. Like it was just really heavy. It gave me chills, and it just felt like something was in her room. I had a lady write to me about something very similar, that it just felt like one day when she was with her child in the bedroom and her child had been telling her that she could see ghosts. Her mom decided to try to feel what that experience was like. For her child. And so she went into the room and she said she felt the same way. Now, mind you, this was years. My daughter may have been a teenager by then. So this was years after this happened to me. And one of the things I said to this mom is, I know how you feel. I had that feeling before. I didn't know what it was, but it just didn't feel right. And that's what this mother described. She said she was sitting down on her daughter's bed wanting to understand what her daughter was feeling. And so what she decided to do was just put herself in her daughter's shoes, and she said something blew at her in the room. Now, I didn't have that experience. I just felt like there was something heavy in there. There was something wrong, and it was near my daughter's bed. And so when I felt that, upon looking at her room, walking into her room, it was worse. And I remember running out of her room. I ran out of her room back to my room, grabbed my Bible. Now, this was before I started seeing or having kids that can see ghosts come to me. I went and grabbed my Bible. When I was younger, I was never afraid of ghosts, even when I was younger. And I kind of had some thoughts about those things. Was I well versed in them like I am now? No. But I had some thoughts. And so I felt like I needed to do something because something was in there. Something was in there. So I grabbed a Bible and I went into her room. and I started to pray. And I, in my prayer, said, I demand whatever this is to go away. Now, to tell you why I did that, I don't know. It's just what I felt like I needed to do at the time. And so, once I was done, I felt peaceful, and her room felt less heavy. Back then, I just kind of ignored it and couldn't explain exactly what that meant. Um, but I know that as a mom, excuse me, as a mom, I felt relief, felt like it was okay, and felt like I can leave her in her room. So, mind you, if you go back in the story just a little bit, I felt like I couldn't leave her in there. Like there was really something in her room. And I can still kind of feel that presence, if you will, because I know it was a presence. And some of you have had that experience too. And so what I learned from that is that I wanted to read a little bit about it. And so if I think back, because that baby is 22 this year. So if I think back about 19 years ago, that's kind of when the internet was really jump starting. And so I was able to kind of read some things about it. And I read that there were other stories about people who had these feelings. So I didn't know what, and sometimes like if I don't understand what stuff is and it's just a feeling, even to this day, I'll just read about it. Like I tell you a short experience recently. Somebody brought up black magic to me, and I was just like, whoa, that's new for me. And I had a feeling that something more sinister was happening. It was just an aura. Some of you understand what that means. Just a feeling. And it kind of backed me up with this person. And I thought, wow, I am going to research. Thank you. I'm going to research what this means because I don't know what this means. And somebody started explaining it to me. And that's kind of how I felt when I experienced this with, my child. And so after that, I decided to start something. And I didn't write this on the blog, but I'll tell you what it is because it actually deals with real estate as well. I started when I would buy a house or rent an apartment or something like that. This is when I started to pray over, stuff where I was living. So, for example, the entire house, my house right now, is blessed. I prayed over it because in that moment, back then when she was 2 or 3, I felt like this was something I needed to bless my house or I need to cleanse my house. I need to always do that. But that was something that I didn't do with that house. And thank you. Thank you for the compliment. That was something that I didn't do with that house. And so going forward, I did start blessing my houses and cleansing them. And the funny thing about that experience is that I started to do that because I got mad that something was there. It made me mad because I'm protective over my kids. And so I thought, was something trying to get my baby? I mean, all these things were going through my head. And so she did stay asleep. She's a good sleeper to this day. She sleeps very well. So I picked her up and I put her in the bed with me. And I said, that's it. I'm no longer, going to be in a house that I don't bless because that was scary to me. So that was my throwback Friday, just a little bit of experience that I had at that point. And the funny thing is that transferred to all of my kids, that whole protective nature of, blessing the house and funny thing about that is I married someone who also believes that you have to bless homes and, can feel when, things just don't seem right. So I didn't have to explain that. He just said, yep, let's get it cracking. we need to, protect our house. And so, speaking of houses, let's talk about real estate. OMG. I never, if you don't know me personally, a lot of people don't know that I actually had a real estate license for 5 years. I just gave it up in 2020. So I practiced real estate for about 5 years, and I really like real estate, but man, it's hard. That's hard work. And so it's not something that I want to do now. But when I was practicing real estate, boy, oh boy, from selling my own home to purchasing a new one to visiting other people's houses, man, oh man, have I seen some creepy stuff. Woo! I can tell you one house when we were looking to buy a house. This was in St. Louis. A lot of my ghost stories are out of St. Louis, if you haven't gathered that yet. One house, I still remember the house. There were two, but this one in particular could be in a movie. It was big. It was nice. It sat up on a hill in the neighborhood. But when we pulled up to that house, we both looked at each other and said, oh, hell no. It was just something about that house. The funny thing is, I was talking to somebody yesterday about real estate, and I said something about an old Victorian that may have been built. It was two people in the 1800s, and I said aloud, you can't pay. Now, see, for as much as I know about these things, I said, I'm not buying ever in life a house that was built in the 18th century. Absolutely not. And this person said, I don't blame you. They're all haunted. People always equate hauntings with homes like those old Victorians or those pink ladies, if you know what pink ladies are. With being haunted. It is just so funny because then I think one came up yesterday. I was talking to my mom. I was with my parents and I was talking to my mom, and I think we were talking about a house. Oh, we were talking about a hotel. And I think we were watching it. Oh, I know what it was. It was on Wheel of Fortune. My mom and my dad and I. And we all looked at each other, and I said out loud, we can win a stay at that hotel all we want to if we were on Wheel of Fortune. But I said, everybody's gonna stay at that hotel but me. I'm not staying in a hotel that was built in like 1800 something. And the funny thing is that my parents said, we aren't either. Those things are haunted. I said, yeah, everybody thinks that old Victorians are haunted. Yeah, because they probably are. They're very creepy to me. I mean, you see them in the Addams Family and stuff like that, so it makes sense. But I had to sell a couple of those houses in St. Louis, and there was some that number one, sometimes I would refuse to go in the basement. I would send some of the guys in the basement because I wouldn't do it because some of them were just creepy. There was one that used to be a funeral home. And I was like, oh, hell no, you guys can go down. For as brave as I am, right? And always saying, oh, I'm not scared to go. Some stuff does creep me out. Even some of the kids that I work with creep me out. So I just wouldn't do it. And so, there was another one. Yeah. And my best friend is on it. She's like, and mice. She knows, man. I hate mice. That's the other issue. You are absolutely right. I hate mice. You know it. And so I always think, ooh, there's mice down there. And I'll go in the basement stomping like I'm brave, knowing in the back of my mind I'd be scared of mice and dark stuff in the basement. Some of this stuff will get to me that I hear with these kids. I'm not necessarily a chicken, but some stuff was just creepy to me. So listen, let me tell you this story. I don't know if I've ever shared this in detail on my blog, but that's the purpose of the podcast. I'm going to tell you. So let's see, I got to keep this kind of confidential. Okay, so just to get to the point, I actually sold a building where a woman was allegedly murdered. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. Okay. So when I find this out, I'm like, okay, she was murdered. Okay. All right. What we need to do is get this place sold. Okay. It was a 2-flat. So she lived upstairs, someone else lived downstairs. And you know what? Let me just sidebar. You know what made me mad is that from what I heard, this was a really nice woman who had a tenant. And do you know that this tenant, when this woman was killed, moved right into her space upstairs? And when she was evicted, do you know that she stole things out of that home away from this murdered woman's family? Can you believe that? She stole the freaking toilet, everybody. When I tell you she stole things, she stole things. So here I am in this beautiful old building. A lot of older homes, people fix them up and keep them nicely, or they gut them, and so they're beautiful. They may have been built in the early 19th century, but when you gut them or when you renovate them, they're very beautiful. And this woman who owned the building took very good care of not only her tenant, who was not paying rent, but also of this building. Oh, if I could give you guys an address, you would just, if you like real estate, you go, this is nice. And the neighbors were so nice. And so anyway, one day, obviously when you sell real estate, when you have to go into the house or the building, you have to look at it. This was actually an apartment building, 2 flats, so I had to go look at it. And I'm looking around like this tenant ransacked this building, right? I go upstairs and I will never forget it. Walk upstairs and look in the bedroom, and the person that was showing me the building said, this is where she was killed. And it was left like this for a year. So, what does that mean? Okay, that means that the person who died allegedly drowned in her bedroom. And the bucket that was used, this was an elderly woman who was no match, who would be no match for someone not even of my age, okay, in defending herself. Pisses me off. I was pissed off back then and pisses me off now. I hate when people abuse the elderly and kids. The person that harmed her allegedly used a bucket of water and put her head in the bucket and drowned her. Can you believe that? Yep. And it was all left in the home the way it happened, including the sheets on the bed, for a year. A year. So I'm looking at all this and I am feeling dread. I still remember it. I can still describe every detail of that building. So the feeling of dread just came over me intensely, right? It was left in that state. I kid you not, it was left in that state. And I thought, Why would forensics do this? So I'm about to sell a home where someone was murdered, according to the neighbors and the police report. And everything that was used to do it was still there. And no one moved this woman's stuff out or the sheets. Come on. So I said, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. We're going to board these windows up. We are going to get somebody to clean up this stuff. And I'm going to walk through this building and I'm going to try to be brave because I know somebody was murdered in here. And this is creepy as hell. And guess what? I disclosed it to buyers. I sure did. I disclosed it. I walked through the building. The building had an upstairs and a downstairs. Like I said, it was a 2-flat. So I go downstairs and I am floored by all of the trash that the tenant left. And I feel like it's really cold down there, although the heat is on. That was probably one of the spookiest real estate experiences that I had. You know, for myself. And it was not a pleasant one because I knew that this woman was murdered in there. Imagine that. Imagine that. So I go downstairs and I'm looking around and it's just really dark. It smells, it's creepy. The windows are closed. It just feels like, her spirit may have been there because it was to me, it was so unsettled because she lost her life. And here's what happened. I listed the building and it sold in one day, the same day, within a few hours, even with it being disclosed that someone lost their life in the building and all of those items were still in the building. Although we had to board the windows up to prevent people from breaking in there and taking like lead pipes and stuff like that. So now you have a building where there was someone murdered in it and there is a history there with the tenant, but also apparently the tenant kept coming back and forth in the home, which is why we had the windows boarded up. And it feels creepy. It feels like there's a spirit in there on both floors. Oh boy, it was a lot. And it was very dark because then we had boarded up the doors and the windows, and I had the keys to the padlocks. When they board the windows and stuff up in order to get into the building, you padlock it, and you have a key to it so you can get back and forth. I have to tell you, I never did after that. I didn't go back. I had this huge open house where I kept the doors open so investors and everything could come in, and an investor actually bought it knowing everything that had happened. Like I said, it sold within a couple of hours, but even when that investor went in there, it was kind of like, man, this is some creepy stuff, right? So then it was really dark because everything was boarded up, and I didn't go back into that building by myself. I just couldn't do it. I have my limits. For one, so what I was doing, number one, is I kept thinking about this woman because some of the neighbors had showed me pictures and said some things about her. And so she had a really good, reputation in the community. And so that was sad in and of itself. But then to learn that she had been murdered, that was, yeah. I couldn't go back in there by myself. So, that was one of my experiences. I was unbothered about selling the building, but actually going back in there, I didn't go without my husband. Um, and ironically, the person that it had multiple offers immediately, and none of them cared that there was a murder in there. Not one of them, and it sold. And we closed. So that's just, just a couple of the real estate experiences. But I went into some places that I thought were pretty darn creepy. Pretty creepy. I went to another house, and I'll tell you this. I didn't write this on the blog, but I'll tell you another real quick experience. Went to another house, and it was a house that was newly renovated, and it was really pretty. We were actually looking at it to buy it, for our family home. And so my husband knows quite a bit about construction, right? And he's going, I don't like the house. I will answer that question. Give me 1 second, because that's actually a good question. It's funny, but it's a good question. My husband was like, no, 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 we can't buy this house because there's cheap construction here, right? And so I said, okay, cheap construction. I went upstairs into, it's always me, right? I went into the upstairs and went into one room, and it was blue. Man, I ran out of that room. So, I don't know if I have a sixth sense or something, right? But when I went into that room, I told my husband, I don't want to buy this house. There is something wrong with that room, and I don't know what it is. It's something creepy in that room. I walked my behind right out of it. I grabbed my son, who was an infant. You know how you can put the babies in a pumpkin seat or the car seat and pull the car seat out of the car and just sit it in the house? I couldn't sit him in there. I couldn't sit him in there. I said, oh, God, no. We are out of here. And my husband said, well, that's all I need to hear. Let's roll. And we left that house alone. So throughout my real estate license, whether it's for my family or someone else's, I actually had a woman with me. I was showing her some properties, and she could actually see ghosts. And we went into one property, and she said, well, we're turning around and leaving because I just saw something dark shadowed in the corner, and it's getting ready to show itself to me. And I know it's dark. Let's go. What do I sense? Explain that to me. I really appreciate you talking to me because I don't know what it is, but I sense something. You're right. And while you explain that to me, I'm going to address something else. Someone asked me in a joke for that building where the woman passed away or was murdered in there, had asked if there was a price reduction on it. Absolutely not. That's a good question. Although this person was joking, she said it was a bad joke. You're right. That was a bad joke. But it's actually a good question. No one actually bought it for list price. It sold above list price because we had multiple offers on that building. So when I tell you no one cared that there was a murder in the building, they did not care. Not at all. They bought that building. It sold within 1 hour. When somebody on the podcast on Podbean said what I sense is electric energy or magnetic energy, I don't know. I don't know what that is, but I will write it down and study it because I definitely could sense this stuff in some of those houses, and I was out. It is paranormal if you've listened to the blog and read the podcast, honey. Somebody just said this is not paranormal. The blog and the podcast, the blog and the podcast, if you have been following it, it is all about the experiences of children. Sometimes I deviate from the topic because I have some of my own experiences. And so this was something that I decided to talk about in October only, because I actually don't talk a lot about my personal experiences, but I did want to talk about this in the month of October. So you kind of have to follow the blog and the podcast in order to get a feel for some of the stuff that I'm saying. Also, this is my journey. in psychology while working with children that can see ghosts. So once I had experienced a lot of paranormal activity with children, some of this stuff I paid more attention to as time went on, which is what I am talking about now. So, yes, it is, but you have to be a listener. Okay, and you have to follow the blog. So, thank you for pointing that out. So, if I need to clarify things, that's right, you let me know. It is, this is just some of my personal experiences. Okay. Um, and so another experience that I had, okay, so October Ghost Stories, another experience that I had was interesting. Now, this one ties with the angel in the tree. If you do not know what the angel in the tree means, go back to the blog and read about it. This is an angel that children talk to me about for a very long time. So apparently, this is an angel of mine who guards me outside and will sit in a tree or sit on my car or something like that. According to the kids, this is an angel that does not come into my house, for example. This is one that guards me from outside. So, because kids don't always describe paranormal activity and, for example, demons, they call dark angels, and their little brains, they can't formulate the exact verbiage to describe these things. So a lot of the kids kept saying, even teenagers would say, hey, there's your angel in the tree, or there's the angel in the tree, or the angel in the tree is helping me with these IQ tests. So when I say angel in the tree, that's what I'm talking about. So, excuse me, one of the times that I was talking to one of the kids, it was striking to me because all the kids, obviously they didn't know each other, and I did not ask questions. Typically, these kids would just kind of tell me things. But one of the things that all of the kids said to me is that there were two of my angels who revealed that they would show themselves to me. And I was like, okay, that's great, because I want to see this stuff myself. But I don't know because I don't see ghosts. And so the kids would say, yeah, they said that they will show themselves to you so you'll know that they're real over time. And so I did see the one that stands behind me in a dream several times, and I talked about those on the blog too. But the angel in the tree I had never seen, right? But all the kids can see him, and they can describe him to me. So the only reason I know what he looks like is because the kids would tell me that he would sit in the tree, he would sit on the car, he had on a black suit, he glowed white, he had white wings, and he liked to tell stories about me to the kids, stories that the kids wouldn't know about. And this one was pretty guarded with regard to what was said about me to the kids. So it was kind of like he would say enough for me to know that he was real to the kids without revealing my personal information, because I would kind of be like, well, I'm still a psychologist. You still have to keep your boundaries with your clients. Don't you tell them private stuff about me. But little stuff like we went to Antigua years ago and the kids knew about it. Stuff like that. And the kids wouldn't know that because that was before, I met some of these kids. And so I don't disclose those things because you always have to keep boundaries. So I knew this stuff was real just because of little stuff like that. And so I kept saying to some of the kids when we would talk about it, well, the angel hasn't shown himself to me, the angel in the tree, and they would always say it, especially child B, the angel in the tree is going to show himself to you. He's going to show himself to you. So let me tell you what happened one day. And I will never forget it. Two things happened. One was a dream, and then this one. So one night we were, which one came first? It had to be the dream. So let me tell you about the dream first. I did not write this in the blog. One night I had a dream about someone that I was really angry with. And there was a male angel that was in the dream. I didn't know that he was an angel. I was just looking at him and he was telling me, you have to learn how to forgive people. You have to forgive this person. And I said, why? And he said, because this person is your friend and that's what we're supposed to do. We are supposed to forgive people. And I said, well, I don't want to forgive this person. I'm mad. And so the angel said, you have to forgive. Now I looked to my right and this person was walking up the steps in my dream. And then I looked at the angel and the angel opened up his wings in front of me. And I was just standing there and it looked like we were in a school building. And I was just standing there and he said, you have to forgive this person. This person is your friend. And at that point, when I woke up, I did forgive this person. We are friends to this day, right? But at the time, I was really mad. And after that dream, I never had a negative thought about this person again. But ironically, I was able to see what this angel in the tree looked like, right? So fast forward to the blog, when I wrote about one night, my family and I were at dinner. And when we were at dinner, let's see, our family room was connected to the kitchen, but the family room was really big. But if you were sitting in my seat, I want to give you a visual. The windows to the family room were on my left. They were all the way down. Remember, I said it was a square shaped, big family room. And so the sun was shining. And I looked up and I can see the reflection of our tree because there was a tree in front of the window. I can see the reflection on the right wall. So remember, the windows were on the left and the tree was on the left. There was a big tree in front of the window. The sun was shining through the family room and the reflection was on the wall on the right-hand side. And the leaves and the branches were showing in the reflection. And I looked up at it and there was a face there. Clearly a man's face, to the point where I said to my family, look at the wall. Just look. And I left it there. I wish I had my camera phone because I wish I could have taken a picture of it. But there was clearly a man's face in the image in the tree on the wall. And so I nudged my husband. I said, look at the wall. Look at the wall. That's the angel in the tree that the kids tell me about. Look, he's showing himself to me like the kids said he would show himself to me. Look, he's just sitting there. And my oldest child looked and my husband looked and they were like, oh, hell no, we're not looking at this. We're out of here. And I'm like, there he is. And I'm kind of excited because at that point, I can see the shadow, but I can't see ghosts, to be clear. But I can see the image on my wall and it stayed there. And so when I saw Child B and Child B's mother again, they already knew. They said, we told you that he would show himself to you. You saw him. I was like, and I can't see ghosts, but I can definitely see a reflection. And that was a reflection on the wall. And I never forgot that moment. And I said, he actually showed himself to me. And they were like, duh, he said he would. And so the kids will always talk to ghosts in front of me when they were comfortable. And Child B was very comfortable. I have a lot of experiences with Child B. And so the tree was moving outside and she was looking out there. And I said, ask him. And then she said, you ask him. I said, was that you? And she looked at me and smiled. And her mother said, that was him. He was showing himself to you like he said he would. And I was like, oh my God. I have so many experiences like this with the kids. And I said, every kid said that I would see him. And he showed himself to me. And they said, yes, he did. He's around you. And so that was an interesting type feeling, because in all the years of dealing with kids that can see ghosts, I had never had that kind of experience where I could actually see the reflection on the wall. That was new for me. It has never happened since. It happened that one time. Interesting, right? For me too. All right. Another little story I had. There are a lot of you who talk to me about your dreams. I mean, even in person. So, for the last part of this blog, I decided to share another one of my dreams with you, because this is one that happened to me when I was very sick. I was about 26 years old, and I had never, I talked to my parents about this for obvious reasons if you read the blog, but I had never really, disclosed this too much to anybody but them. But when I was 26, I was getting my master's degree, and believe it or not, so when was I 26? Back in 90 something, 96 maybe, 1996, long time ago. And I got chicken pox. Thank you for believing me. It's absolutely true. Everything that I'm telling you, even this dream. And oh my God, guys, I was sick. 26 years old with chickenpox. I was so sick. So I had to miss, I was in graduate school getting my master's degree, and I had to miss, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks of school because I had a fever. Oh God, they almost hospitalized me, to make a long story short, but they didn't, because I felt like I can handle it. But here's the thing. No one could get to me because there was a snowstorm. Yep, I was 26 when I had chickenpox. And this was, let me sidebar for a second. I don't know if I wrote this in the blog, but I had just gotten my blood tested to see if I had chickenpox when I was a kid, right? Because back then they just didn't give you a chickenpox shot. It was brand new when I was 26. And so because it was so new back then, they would check your blood to see if you had any titers, I think that's what it's called, or T cells or something like that, or antibodies for chickenpox. So if I had the antibodies, I wouldn't have gotten a chickenpox shot, right? Because it would have told the doctors that I actually had chickenpox when I was little, but maybe my parents missed it. So I literally had just taken the blood test, right? I kid you not, got chickenpox probably 2 weeks after that. Went to the ER. The doctors came to get me from the back of the hospital. They wouldn't let me, because remember, chickenpox is highly contagious, so they wouldn't let me come through the ER. So I went to the back. It's a real long story because I had to have every professional on me. I had to see a pediatrician because doctors didn't see adults with chickenpox, right? Because we all got it when we were kids back in the 70s and 80s. So the pediatrician let me go home, even with a fever of 103. I couldn't eat. I could barely sleep. I still remember this as if it was yesterday. I was covered from head to toe, in my eyes, ears, hair. My hair was long back then too, and it broke off because of chickenpox. I mean, yeah, I was covered. And so I was very sick, and I could only eat popsicles, sit on a sofa, and watch TV. And so I was sitting on the sofa and fell asleep. And I'm telling you, I don't know what happened to me, but this is what I do remember. That I could see, even when I close my eyes, I can still see it. I saw a woman in my living room, and they were on my left. No, where was my living room table? Yep, they were on the left, standing. So I don't know if I was like in a drowsy, like a sleep wake, you know, how you're drowsy and you're starting to wake up. But when I looked to my left, I could see the spirit of a woman and the spirit of a man just standing over me. And I was like looking at it like, who are they and what is this? And so they told me, well, you're not alone. We're here and we're going to be here with you. And you don't have to feel scared. You're going to be okay. You're going to be able to go back to school. You're going to be able to tell people these stories, but we're here. And the woman looked like familiar to me. She had long black hair and was short. And I'm short too. I'm only 5'4". And the male was taller, but not really that significantly, you know, much taller than her. But he was there and they were coming closer to me as if they wanted to rub me to make sure I was okay. I was sweating. Just imagine having chickenpox that old. And so they said they would stay with me. What was ironic, I think I was going to say earlier, is that I was in Nashville and it never snows, although my friends are telling me that it's been snowing in Nashville. It was quite a bit over the past couple of weeks, but it doesn't happen like that. And it didn't happen like that when I lived there. But for some reason, we had an ice storm, right? And then Cleveland, Ohio, my parents had an ice storm or snowstorm, which is not unusual for Cleveland, but they did. And then my ex-husband was in St. Louis. We were just dating at the time. And there was a snowstorm in St. Louis. So I couldn't go home. I couldn't go to St. Louis. Obviously, I was highly contagious and I was sick. My parents couldn't come to me, and it would have been okay for them to come to me because they already had chickenpox, right? Obviously, there was no cure. I mean, no vaccination until about 95 or 96. Anyway, I was alone. I was alone. And I think that's why these two ghosts were telling me, we're going to stay with you. You're okay. Uh, and so when I was waking up, my mother called me to check on me. They were calling me all the time because no one could get to me and I was that sick. I mean, I even had chickenpox in my throat. It was crazy. That's why I couldn't eat. And so I was talking to my parents about it. And my dad showed me a picture of a woman. And I kid you not, it was the woman in the picture. And you know who she was? My grandmother. She was my grandmother. She was my paternal grandmother. And I never met her because she died many years ago, long before I was created. It may have been in the 1940s when she died. I don't know the exact year, but let me tell you something else. Something was put on my heart about 6 months ago. And I Googled my grandmother's name, and you know what came up? Her obituary. And I said, oh my God. And something was just put on my heart to print that out, and I gave it to my dad. And my dad looked at me and he said, all of these years, I looked for my mother's obituary and could never find it. Where did you find this? I said, I Googled it. And I said, I found it. And I found your brother's. My dad has a Purple Heart for his brother who died in the war. I think it was Vietnam. He died in the war. All of the men in my family have been in the military. And so I gave it to my dad and I said, now mind you, this was 2021 and that happened in 96. And I said, this is who was in my dream when I had chickenpox. It was my grandmother. It was her. And the funny thing is, I didn't know this, but I am the one of all the grandkids that looks like her. And my dad has always said it, you look like my mother. She died tragically too, guys. And they were in a snowstorm and she fell out of the car and my dad was driving. And so I feel like I let him, my dad's still alive. He just turned 87. He had a birthday this month, but I feel like giving him that obituary brought him some solstice for his mother, because all these years, I mean, he was very close to his mother, all his brothers were, and I was very happy to be able to, for some reason, to find that on Google. Um, the man, the man, you know who that was? When I figured it out, it was my grandfather. It was my mother's father. I'm his only grandchild. And my mother said, Short? And I said, yeah. She said, that's my father. And I thought about it. I said, you're right. He's never come to me in a dream at that moment. So I woke up and I felt a lot more comfort because I was not alone anymore. And so I saw them clearly in my dream. And that was my grandfather. I haven't seen them since. I guess they're like, she's old now. We don't need to go and help her. But, it took 6 to 8 weeks to recover from that. So I was pretty sick for a long time, went back to school, obviously, and finished my master's degree. But yeah, that's one of my stories. So every now and then, guys, I will tell you some stories like this where I've had my own experiences or personal thoughts about these things. Um, and I try to talk about other things so it's not so boring for you guys if you're following me. So for example, next week, I'm actually going to talk about October celebrity ghost stories, where I do have some things in common with some of these celebrities. So I chose them on purpose, except one, because it's a new article that came out last year. But some of these things, I have some ties to some of these celebrities, and they don't know it, of course. But I know it. And so I am actually going to tell you some of the short stories that I know and some of the connections that I might have, to a couple of these celebrities. But I just thought that was a fun topic. I try to find fun things to do, especially in months like October. So, hey, if you have not followed the blog, make sure you go back because I tell a story, and I just told one again last week about The Exorcist and how it's tied to St. Louis, and it's tied to St. Louis with one of my jobs. So, see, one of those things. So, you guys make sure you take a look at the blog. How you find me? That's a good question. I'm everywhere. You can call me 765-205-1959. You can email me. I respond to everyone. You can catch me on Twitter. You can catch me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram right now live at Kids Can See Ghosts at gmail.com. It's the Gmail or the email. On Instagram, it's at Kids Can See Ghosts Can You. If you Google my name, you can write on my website. Even if you don't agree with me, do that because that keeps me on my toes. I don't mind that. We can talk about it. Lisa, Lisa, Liggins, Liggins, Chambers, CHAMBERS.com. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on, oh gosh, I can't even think of all the social media sites. Facebook, you can send me a private message on Facebook. I'll respond to you. So you can find me. I'm not hard. And I would appreciate it because I want to hear from you. Okay. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Hey, you all be safe out there if you're going through all of this snow like we are. All righty. You guys have a good rest of the week.